And here we go. Agricola, 15b. In prolio fortiorem esse qui spoiliet. So in battle, we have the accusative comparative. It is the more braver, or the rather braver one, qui, who takes the spoils, or does the plundering. Nunc, now, ab ignavus, from the cowardly, plurum qui is the adverb for generally, or most people are doing this, so now, generally is from the cowardly and in bellibus, the unwarlike people. Iripai, they are stealing from domos, houses, abstrahi, dragging away the libros, the children, in iungai dialectus. Now we're still talking plural here, so they're forced to be joined into the levy raising for soldiers. Tamquam, as though, tamquam is an adverb, it can be a conjunction. So, just as though, morai to die, tantum merely or only. So they're willing to die. Nescentibus, but they're not wanting to pro patria for their country, their homeland. So they're willing to die in many ways, but not for their country. Quantulum, this is the diminutive, something that's a small amount. Enum is four. For a small amount, transisi, have crossed over, militum, of the soldiers, if themselves, if the Britons, the nominative, they numerate themselves. If the Britons count themselves, the amounts who have crossed over the channel is a quantulum, just a small amount of soldiers. Sic Germanius excusisse jugum. So we're still in Aradia oblique. So thus the Germans would have shaken off excussis, their yoke. There's the yoke of being dominated. And with a flumen, with a river, non an ocean. These are ablatives. So they'd defended themselves, and they only had a river and not an ocean that had to be crossed for the Germans. Sibi, for themselves, dative. Patriam, conjugies, parents. So we've got nouns listed, and the way Latin does it is it doesn't use any commas. Only adjectives usually take the word et or something, but you can just list nouns like that. So for the accusative of their homeland and their spouses and their parents, this is what they're doing, sibi, for themselves. And illus, this is the former people who would be the enemy. Avaritiam and luxuriam, so for greed and luxuries, esse was the causus belli, the cause of war, was for the enemy. Recessuros, this is the second type of future, and it's plural because of the os. So they would recess, they would retreat. Ut divus Julius, who's nominative, as the divine Julius, recessis had received. So that's pluperfect. Modo, in the way, virtutem, which is female, maiorum suorum emilarentor. They would emulate in the way of the virtues or valour of their maiorums, of their ancestors. Neve prole unius aut ulterius eventu, which is a fourth ablative, pavescerent, which looks like a third. So the enclitic V means or, so not in unius prole, not in one battle, or in ulterius, or in a second or another. Eventu means in the turnout of what was the result of the one or two battles. Didn't make them pavescerent, didn't make them fearful from the turnout from one or two battles. Plus impetus, so with more attacks. This is can be a fourth as well. So felicibus, to the lucky, they would have more impetus, more attacks. Maiorem constantium, but there would be more steadfastness, penes, which means belonging to them. So miseroses, so to the wretched ones. So we've just talked about battles, and so the ones who have been lucky, they'll make more attacks, but to the miseros ones, The wretched ones, the ones who had been beaten, belonging to them would be more steadfast of heart, basically. Yam. So now, Britannorum. This is a plural genitive. Of the Britons, etiam even. Dios. And so now, or already, even the gods, misare, were taking pity of the Britons. We don't use that in English. We don't say taking pity of them, but it does here. Qui, who, Romanum ducem. This is appositions of accusatives. So the Roman leader, absentem, present participle accusative. So the Roman leader absent, he was away. Qui, who relegatum in alia insula, who was relegated into another island, exercitum, whose army were relegated onto another island, and the Roman leader was absent. They were detained, detinerant. So his army was detained on another island. Yam ipsos, again, accusative plural. So now already themselves, quod difficulum furit, the thing which is most difficult, that's a superlative, deliberare. They were weighing up, or they were in debates ipsos themselves, something that was very difficult. And the next sentence, poro. So furthermore, in eos modo, in this way, concilius. They were having councils, or they were consulting each other, so they were having discussions. Remember, they were deliberating. A thing which is periculsius, which is a comparative, which is very dangerous, deprehende. So in this way, these councils, there was more danger of being apprehended than audare, than being bold or daring. 16. His at qui talibus. So these and talibus, such types, invicem, in turn, instincti. That means they're inspired by these and such things. Budakia. Here's this is the female leader, proper noun. Generis, of the race, regae femina duce. So she was the female leader, royal, from regia, of this race. For neither sex in imperius, in giving the orders, did they discern. So they didn't distinguish between either sex being in charge, and Boudica was the female leader of this race. Sumpsere universi bellum. They took up, universally, that means all of them, a bellum, the war. Ac sparsos. And so dispersed, or straggling per castle through the forts, milites consectati, that's plural again. So they followed the soldiers who were straggling out through the forts. Ex pugnatus praesidis, another ablative absolute. So they'd stormed the garrisons, ipsam colin, and the colony itself, invasere, they had gone into, they had sacked it. Ut sedem servitutis, because this was the seat of their servitude, which is in Colchester. Nec ulam, neither was there any in barbarus ingenis, which means in their inborn character or nature. Genus is type savitiae. So it's a type of, that's genitive. Neither was there any type of savagery in the barbarian's character, omitted in ira in Victoria. These probably are ablatives. Or neither was there any anger, or in the anger and victory did they omit any type of savagery. So they were barbarous, as you expect barbarians to be. Okay, quod nisi. So which, nisi, unless, Paulinus, nominative, cognito provinciae moto, which unless Paulinus had known of this motion, this rebellion, provinciae, of the province, propere, hastily subvenit, and he had turned up to help hastily, amissa Britannia for it. Britain would have been lost. Quam unius prolia fortuno, which the fortune of one battle, unius being one, would restitute the former submission. Patientis can mean patience, but it means submission. Plerisqui, so the majority of them, tententibus arma, that's present participle plural ablative. So they were retaining their arms, quas, which means they were conscious of their defection because they'd rebelled, and proprius, and the fear, timor, was agitating. They were stirred up with their fear from the legato, from the governor, proprius. Nay, quam, lest, although egregious, which just means in a special type of ceteris the rest adroganta, so he had a special kind of arrogance in deditos, etc., to those who had given over, those who had surrendered, the rest who had surrendered, and ut sua cuius inurit, and so any type of injuries that had been done to them, ultor, revenge, he'd be making revenge, jurius, consolare. So basically he'd be planning a very jurious, a very hard revenge. So basically all this back here means from the beginning, so they were retaining their arms, most of them, they were conscious of their rebellions, and they were in fear from the governor, things that from his characteristics, and lest anything that they fear, because fear, taking a nay, just means it positive as well. So although he would have an arrogance or heavy-handedness towards those rest who had surrendered, basically, yeah, because he wasn't the kind of guy who would just let these injuries go. So missus past participle. So therefore, igitor, Petronius Turpilanius was sent, as though it would be exorabilia, who would be more persuasive, and he knew how to handle the situation. And the delictus, these were the wrongdoings of the enemy, hostium, and eo paenantitio mitio. So he would be more mitio, more softer to those who would regretted. Paenantitio means if they regretted. Compositus prioribus, having settled the prior conflicts and problems, this is ablatives, nothing beyond this, nothing ultra, orsus, again that's a past participle like missus, he dared do nothing beyond this, he tradited the province to dative Trebellius Maximus. Novus is this common word as well. Trebellius nominative was segnior, so he's more sluggish or lazy, and nullius castrorum experimentus. And so he had no experience in military camp life, no previous experience in camps. Comitate quadam, and with a certain friendliness, comitate, curando, we have a gerund, provinciam, tenure. So he held the province and curanda, took care of it in a certain friendly way. And the daily dictionary word is exorabilia, a comparative, more exorable or persuasive. Okay. Didicere iam barbari. So now the barbarians had learnt, quoque also, ignoscere, to forgive or to overlook with a dative, vitis blandientibus. So these are like flatterings and vices. They fell to these pleasant vices. And interventus civilium amorum. And so with the interruption of the civil arms or civil war, or the civilians taking up arms in the civil war, praebuit, it offered aiustem excusationem, these are two apposition accusatives, for this segnatia, which is just sluggishness and inaction. Sed discordia laboratum, which is comes from the supine of that, which means it was produced by labour, basically. So, but discord was produced when ad suitus expeditionibus miles, when a soldiery, a miles, accustomed to expeditions, or these field manoeuvres and work. Lasciviret, which comes from the word meaning they frolicked or played. Otio, in leisure. So basically discord was produced when an army which was used to fighting was given over to leisure time. Trebellius, the nominative. Fuga was flight, and vitatia exercitus, and in an avoidance of the era, the anger exercitus can be genitive in the fourth of the army. He was in Latibris, which is a hiding place. So he fled and avoided the anger of the army in a hiding place. Indecoros, this is still a nominative, so it must be Trebellius. So dishonourable and humilis, humility comes from alonus. Precario, this would be dative or ablative. It means by entreaties. He was soon prefuit, which is presum. Soon he was in charge, but he was sort of dishonoured and lowly. And velut, as if a pacta, there'd been a pact for this licentiousness of the army, so as if he'd made an agreement that the army could be given over to pleasures. Salute ducus, he retained his place of safety as a leader, of leadership. And seditio, the sedition or the rebellion, sine sanguine, without blood, and stood. So it was settled, the sedition was. Nec, neither did Vitius Bolanus menantibus ad hoc civilibus bellus. So menantibus, civilibus, and bellus, they all go into ablative absolutes. And ad hoc just means still, it's the adverb. So neither did Vitius Bullen, with still remaining in the civil war, did he agitate the Britons, discipline, with discipline. And to finish up, eadam inertia. And the same, this comes from ea, same inertia or stagnus erga hostis, towards the enemy. Similis petulantia castra. There was a similar petulance and while living of the camp, unless or except quad, probably a quad clause, except that the innocent Bolanus, and they'd done no derelictions, nothing wrong, in visus, which would be, so he'd done nothing so that he was hated. Paraverat, prepared or obtained. A caritatem, a dearness. He'd found, he prepared a place of dearness with his authority. Well, that'll do for today.